What's good? It's Woog. The weigh-ins are finished. Both fighters have made weight. We are now ready for Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford. And everything that, has needed to be said has been said. Everybody's pretty much weighed in with their opinion. I've taken Crawford via late stoppage. It was a difficult road to arrive there, and I've told people on multiple occasions that I was always pro Errol Spence. Still am pro Errol Spence generally, but in terms of Spence versus Crawford, for the past few years, majority of the time, I had been pro Spence all along the way, up until maybe about a year and a half ago, basically around the time that Terence Crawford stopped Sean Porter. That event in itself didn't do it for me, but it's one of those things where you could only look at somebody's welterweight resume so long and say, well, who are they fighting at welterweight, before you say, well, how about we look at their performance against whoever they're fighting rather than who they are fighting. So true, resume wise, there is nobody on Terence Crawford's welterweight resume that should lead you to think that he could beat Errol Spence Jr. But if you look at his performances, then it's like, yeah, that guy that we keep on seeing, take to the ring, fight after fight, stopping all of these opponents in all of these creative ways. Yeah, I think that Errol Spence might have his hands full with Terence Crawford, because Errol Spence, I believe, could be winning, 4 out of 6 rounds through 6. Like, it could be 4 rounds to 2. It could be, 5 rounds to 3 through 8 rounds. But at any moment, Terence Crawford could hit him with a shot or a combination that changes the entire fight. And I think that Errol Spence's path to victory, it requires him to move forward in a way that leaves him the most vulnerable. That's why the stylistic clash here is so interesting, because what should work for one fighter will also open the door to work for the other fighter. In this case, that other fighter would be Terence Crawford. But I wanted to talk a little bit. If you want to, by the way, look at my entire preview video. It's up on YouTube right now, the Spence versus Crawford preview. And we did a live chat, Spence versus Crawford. I enjoyed talking to you guys in that live chat. But now we have seen the weigh-in, the ceremonial weigh-in, and we saw the press conference. Now, the press conference was a little bit interesting. I don't want to make too much of the energy between the two fighters and the dynamic between the two fighters, but when I see them communicate and I see the way that they're talking about the fight, I'm not going to make too much of Errol Spence's voice cracking repeatedly. I mean, if you've heard him talk throughout the years, his voice just tends to do that. And he's been working at an exhaustive pace to be able to make weight, so I didn't expect him to be at his best physical self on the Thursday of the press conference. But when you look at perceived confidence, now perceived confidence doesn't always equal confidence. I mean, we all see people peacock all the time, and they really ain't about that, right? Like, that's no secret. Your ways of expressing yourself don't always reflect what's going on the inside. But there was something about the quiet way that Terence Crawford was talking about the fact that he was going to win. And while he was also engaging with, people from Errol Spence's team, I'm still not sure whether it was friends or family. I've seen different rumors, but Terence Crawford was having his back and forth moments with the crowd, then also addressing what he's about to do to Errol Spence in a respective or respectful way, but in a very, very confident way. Errol Spence seems to almost be buying into the idea that Terence Crawford is a better natural athlete. Like, Errol Spence was listing off the different things that he brings to the table, the fundamentals, and other items as well, and then almost deferred the athleticism or the physical talent to Terence Crawford, which I found a little bit interesting, because when Terence Crawford was a lightweight, I didn't look at him as being blazing fast. At 140, it became a little bit more apparent how good of an athlete he was, but I still don't look at him as being somebody whose measurables just jump off the page. Now, he seems very strong. I think he could deadlift a lot of weight. I've seen him run patterns out on a football field. He seems very coordinated and pretty damn athletic, but he doesn't seem like that outlier, like Roy Jones Jr., like different people that we've seen over the years. Cassius Clay back in the day, to be a heavyweight that moved like that then, freak athlete, right? I didn't look at Terence Crawford, never did look at Terence Crawford as being that. So for Errol Spence to almost seem like he was deferring to Terence Crawford when it came to pure talent, I was a little bit, I might have misread that. But also, there's just something about the way that Terence Crawford addresses Errol Spence when he's talking to Errol Spence. And the way that Errol Spence reacts to that. He reacts in a reactive way where Terence Crawford is the one who had that, boy, I will fight you at lunchtime. I will fight you after school. Like, he had that type of energy. And it was reminiscent of that iconic backstage event that they had back several years ago when Terence Crawford seemed like he was dying to make this fight with Errol Spence, and Errol Spence was like, "Yeah, man, we'll have the teams talk, and we're gonna, we'll work it out. I'd want to fight you." And it was almost like Terence Crawford was on his front foot in wanting the smoke, and Errol Spence was reacting to that. Now, again, peacocking doesn't always mean that you are that boy, that you've got the edge on the other. But I just wonder, I also know that Errol Spence just doesn't talk a lot of trash. He's not the most vocal dude, and he doesn't often talk in a disrespectful way towards his opponents. That's never been his MO. But I'm just wondering if that dynamic that I think that I see between them is real, whether that does factor in to whether Errol Spence actually truly believes that he will win this fight. Now, I do think that he will. I think that he thinks he will win this fight. I mean, you don't get this far and you don't respond to adversity in the ring and in life in the way that I've seen Errol Spence do it if you are not built with a certain level of intestinal fortitude. Like, these are things that you need. They're requirements to achieve what Errol Spence has achieved. But one, I do wonder about the eye more than I wonder about how Terence Crawford's age is going to play into the fight. But I also, just in terms of behaviorally, am I making too much of Terence Crawford playing alpha? Like, I don't think that he's just blowing smoke when he does it. I think that he's exuding what he's pretty much exuded throughout his career, and I feel like in the slightest way, and again, I could be misinterpreting this, but I feel like in the slightest way, Errol Spence might be slightly bending to that energy of Terence Crawford. Now, it could be much ado about nothing, right? But I just wonder. I've seen them interact in a few scenarios now, and I see the way that Terence Crawford carries himself, and I see that the way that he expresses his self-belief, and then I see Errol Spence react to that. I just wonder if there's like a slight mental edge that Terence Crawford has. Now, maybe once they get into the ring and they start exchanging punches, all that's gone. Very well might be the case. But heading into the fight, I just wonder if there's a little bit of that mental advantage that Terence Crawford might have, because it just seems like he's been the one who's been pursuing the fight a little bit harder than Errol Spence has. Now, Errol Spence had to move earth as well to make this fight happen, so credit to him. But and he did make his intentions known when he became the IBF title holder. He said, I want to collect all of the belts one by one, take care of everything on the PBC side, and then deal with Terence Crawford. He said that years ago. But I just wonder if Terence Crawford wants this actual fight with Errol Spence more than Errol Spence wants the fight with Terence Crawford. And again, I'm not speaking to anybody's, lack of self-belief or saying that they're not built or cut from a certain cloth. None of that. I'm just saying that damn, Terence Crawford has that I will fight you at lunchtime type of energy where he just seems like, whether it's today, tomorrow, yesterday, like whatever you want to do, let's do it. Like Terence Crawford just comes off with that, and it's almost like Errol Spence has an agreeable reaction to it. Now he did say, "I ain't one of your kids. Like don't play with me." Like Errol Spence did eventually get around to kind of barking back a bit, and again, barking is not his forte, so to speak. Again, I'm going Terence Crawford via late stoppage, and it's not because of that. It's because of stylistic reasons. But yeah, I was just noticing this in the press conference and seeing how Terence Crawford was carrying himself and what that might or might not, but might mean going into the fight on Saturday. But yeah, let me know your thoughts about, the press conference, what your final thoughts are on Spence versus Crawford. I'm just glad that we're getting the fight. Please check out the preview video and the live chat if you get a chance. And again, I think that Errol Spence's game plan at a certain point, because Terence Crawford doesn't have the same reach as a Mikey Garcia, that Errol Spence will have to get a little bit more aggressive. Now, I look at Errol Spence as being a patient but persistent hunter with measured aggression. But I just wonder, I feel like because the reach advantage isn't going to allow Errol Spence to be able to box comfortably from distance like he did against Mikey Garcia and Danny Garcia with the shorter arms. Ugas is the only guy in recent memory that Errol Spence has fought with the comparable or slightly longer reach than himself. And what happened in the early rounds? Errol Spence had to kind of abandon the distance game. Now, it might have been by design, but at a certain point, he came inside and started working those leverage shots where he's got the tremendous balance to get a lot of strength and leverage while he's on the inside, working the body, working up top, to start landing his effective shots and start swinging the fight in his favor. I wonder if he's going to have to do that against Terence Crawford. I assume that he will. I don't think he'll be able to just comfortably box with Terence Crawford from distance. So as he starts pursuing Crawford, I just feel like that gives Crawford too many opportunities to do what Crawford does best, and that is to play the whole rock, paper, scissors games, where Terence Crawford has this innate instinct to be able to kind of read the situation and react in the moment, to know exactly what to throw, when to throw it, to create maximum effect, maximum impact, to damage the opponent, to hurt the opponent. I just feel like Errol Spence's strong suits play too well into Terence Crawford's strong suit. But yeah, let me know your final thoughts on Spence versus Crawford. Let me know what you thought of the press conference. I also thought that it was kind of fun that Derrick James and Bomag got into some of the trash talk. But yeah, let me know your final thoughts on this one before we get into the fight. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Enjoy the fight.